Hey, I'm Cameron Brown, founder of the Thriving Collective, and today on Dov's Leadership Show, we share on how to make a greater impact in the world. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your life, your leadership, and your business. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives. It's part of the interview series, where today we're going to be taking an insider look at global thinking in leadership and why it's more than just a concept. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. If you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. And of course, we're grateful to Inc.com for making us the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And listen, we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's strip it down, dive right in. As a leader, whether you are a CEO, someone in the C-suite, sales leader, entrepreneur, or leader in any capacity, you know that we now live in a super social world where you can connect to anyone all over the planet almost instantaneously. But are we really doing that? And if we do it, what's the real impact? And if we don't do it, what's the consequences? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Our guest today on this episode is Cameron Brown. Cameron was born and raised in the outback of Australia. Yes, the outback. We'll go into that a little bit. In 2016, Cam sold or donated 99% of the things that he used to own to embark on a global quest to show firsthand that how we run our companies, live our lives, and use the natural talents and resources that we have determine not only our own future, but the future of our species and the well-being of our planet. Through the talks he gives and the people he coaches, the music and short films that he creates for audiences in 195 countries, Cameron discusses the important topics including human potential, creative thinking, sustainability, and relationship development. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Mr. Cameron Brown.
Hey! How are we, Dov?
Good, mate. It's good to have you here. Thank you for joining us on the show. It's been a long time coming.
Oh, it's been a long time coming, and it's been a long time since we've seen each other.
It's really good, man. So start us off. Tell us what made you sell everything and travel from Joondalup. And of course, most people in the world will not even know where that is. I just happen to have lived in Western Australia, and I knew lots of people who drove through it, crossing the Nullarbor. For those of you who don't know, that is Aborigine for no trees. It's a desert road with no trees that goes for, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 kilometers or some crazy amount, right? And Joondalup sort of plonked right in the middle there. That's where you lived with the other 14 people and a donkey.
Pretty much, yeah. And a kangaroo. We had a pet kangaroo growing up. Spent life there. Spent some time living in cities after spending and doing all of my schooling out there. And you asked the reason for selling or donating everything. There's a few reasons behind it. One was that I wanted to show that it doesn't matter where you are in the world, when you utilize the tools that are available to us today, the technological tools, in a meaningful way, you can build relationships with anybody, no matter where you are. And so I decided to drop myself into countries that I'd never been to before, didn't speak the language, and showed firsthand how you could do that. I'm a big believer in being a living and breathing example of what I speak and coach on. So that was one of the big reasons. Another was that you don't need things to be happy. And that we as a species are living in excess right now on this planet. And the realization of that came It was after there was a couple of pieces I was doing after hosting some events in the US last year and Canada as well. I was flying back from LA at the time to Australia, and I just had this thought pop into my mind of, there's stuff that's just sitting at my house at home, back in Australia, wasting away. Like I'm not using them. Somebody else will be better off with it than I would. And it was that insight that, there's stuff that isn't being used as effectively as what it could possibly be. So that was a big insight for me there. And the other one came when I was watching a documentary called I Am by a guy named Tom Shadyac. Did a lot of the early Jim Carrey movies, so produced a lot of those. So really wealthy guy from a financial point of view, but realized that that didn't bring him any other happiness, made a massive changes in his own life after an accident occurred. And towards the end of the documentary, one thing that really, really stuck out to me was he said towards the end, he said, we have a name in the body for something that takes more than it needs. We call it cancer. And that hit me big time because I thought we as a species on this planet right now are living like a cancer. And what happens to a cancer? Eventually, it kills the very thing that's keeping it alive. And so it was another thing, a big realization for me. And I had no intention of getting rid of everything at the time. But as it has it when you live, I guess, in a state of curiosity about how you can make a greater impact in the world, it led to that, getting rid of absolutely everything. And it's one of the best decisions I've ever made because this year has been completely incredible.
But you said that you were in LA, you were in the US doing these events. So what were the events?
So last year I hosted invite-only peer network events. So getting quality people together to be able to build real relationships. They were all relationships that I built on LinkedIn. I had never been to the US before running the events there. I didn't even know how to dial a US phone number before starting to build relationships, utilizing LinkedIn as the platform that I used to build those relationships. And 4 months later, I was hosting events and did them a number of times. So.
Let's just put a pause on that for a minute because this, for most of our listeners and viewers, would be thinking, what the hell is he talking about? I mean, at a basic logistics level, okay, I get that you can reach out to people on LinkedIn. Cool. You can make connections on LinkedIn. Cool. Inviting them to an event. Number one, how do you charge them? Number two, how do you do the logistics of setting it up and creating an event? Number three, don't you need a visa to go live and work in another country? Like all these roadblocks would appear in front of that person's mind as they're listening to this. And so it seems like, you either had a horseshoe up your ass or you had a whole team of great people doing amazing things for you. But that's not the truth, right? Tell us how you did it.
Yeah, I think, again, it just comes from having the... I'd say like the courage, but also just curiosity about what's possible. One of the reasons for launching them overseas is I remember I was getting out of the shower one morning, stepped out, and it popped in my mind, you're not dreaming big enough. And so I thought, well, okay, so if I'm not dreaming big enough, then I wonder what else is possible. And that really started that curiosity even more than what I had been before. And it's happened a number of times since. Another one happened just like earlier this morning. Seriously, I had no intention of mentioning this in this interview, but it happened this morning. And funnily enough, I was in the shower again. It's funny how some great things pop into my mind there. Yeah, totally. It's either there or in the rainforest, right? And so again, it was a thought popped into my mind about something that I have planned for Latin America in the rainforest there for a sustainability project, and dreaming out even bigger again. So this state of curiosity and that curiosity of that anything is possible versus the roadblocks that you talked about, like those pieces. None of that. I look back and go, none of that really came up at that time. Now, once I started building the relationships, when I first had that initial phone call, I thought, am I even making this phone call right? Am I putting the +1? Is that correct? Are they even going to want to build relationships with me? Like, there were definitely those things that came in still. And I think that happens even more as we're utilizing technology because we're being exposed to increased levels of external environments that we haven't been exposed to before, increased times where we could potentially be judged either positively or negatively. And so we don't have a strong sense of self, and I think that's a really big part of this, is having a strong sense of self, feeling whole and complete internally so you can give externally and be there to truly serve, which I think is a big part of leadership in itself. And being able to be there and be a true and genuine giver in that space allows people to, I think, for you to overcome the objection that can happen a lot on LinkedIn especially, which is, what are you trying to sell me, dude? Because that's a lot of people's default position on there, and quite rightly so, because of the way that a lot of people are treating that platform. And so in terms of getting through and over those, I think, again, it comes to strong sense of self, belief in self, belief in the value that you have to offer. And I had to offer in believing and having, I guess, the audacity to go, you know what, screw it. Rather than expanding to a different city in Australia, let's have a crack overseas and see what happens.
But you did that, but nonetheless, so you hadn't sold everything at that point.
No.
So you're going to, you're coming to the US to do this peer network group.
Yeah.
Did people pay to come to that?
Yes.
Okay. So why would they pay to come and listen to some guy from outback Australia, or to be part of something? How do they know you're not just some snake oil salesman? Because I'm trying to get in the head of the person listening and going, this just sounds too ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's
a good question.
And on top of that, visas and your own travel and accommodation. So help us understand how that potential objection of, listen, come to my event. I'm going to come from outback Australia to do this event in LA. You should be there. Yeah, I'm kind of busy. I'm eating a sandwich.
Totally get it. And it was the case for a number of people that it was either too busy or they didn't know who I was. For me, I utilize LinkedIn to build relationships and take them offline as soon as I can. So I was as I'm building these relationships, I'm having phone calls, I'm having video calls, I'm having real conversations with people so they can understand that I'm an actual real human being. Then in terms of actually then launching the event, there was a full landing page. There was a video rather than just text. There was that involved that helped them understand. And the language that was utilized was allowing them to understand that it's for quality people that are wanting to build long-term sustainable relationships. Who it's not for is people that are wanting to sell, wanting to get things from other people rather than building those long-term relationships. So we had even though I had never met these people in person before, when I got to there, the people were absolutely incredible in each of the locations. And I think that a lot of that comes down to that, in terms of those initial messages and allowing them to see that I was genuinely there to serve. That what they were paying for, it was while they were paying, it wasn't a huge price, and it was a quality lunch. It was, there was ways for them to be introduced to other people. But yeah, there was a charge involved, and for some stranger from over in Australia. And I've had, conversations with people since where maybe they didn't come along to the first one, that we've kept in touch and finally had a conversation. And I actually had somebody came to my Toronto event that I just ran. We did a ping pong night, and it was a great event. Had some great quality people come. And somebody sent me a message prior to that and said how inspired they were with the work that I was doing, and they didn't really understand when I first reached out the complexity and the level that I was actually embarking on. And now they were able to see it. So I think the key thing is some people need reference points for how it's already in place and it's already rocking and rolling. Some people need time for those physical reference points to know that it's safe and know that it's okay. That's the same in any situation in terms of launching any product or service. So knowing that that's going to be the case, that majority of the people are going to say no, then there's going to be a select number of people that say, yeah, that sounds amazing. Some people will think that you're absolutely like you said, a snake oil, salesperson, and that's totally okay as well because
so how many of those kinds of, pay to attend events have you run so far?
So I ran them in March last year. So I ran them in New York and LA. Then in July, I ran them in New York, LA, and Toronto, as well as 4 locations again in Australia. Realized that those 7 locations over a period of I think it was 4 weeks. So it was brutal. And I recorded music in LA in a recording studio, had a full day photo shoot, had other things happening as well. It was was an intense time, and I think that was what led me to go, well, what's the next evolution of the brand? How can I continue making a greater impact in a scalable and sustainable model? So then I ran another lot this year in 2017, and ran them in 3 locations in North America again. I wasn't going to run any, but it was just a small feeling of, dude, I need to get people together, right? It's
right.
And just allow, and I didn't have time to be able to have one-on-one meetings with everybody anymore.
No.
There's just I have that many connections around the world, and so allowing people to come together and this time around have fun at the same time.
For me, one of the things of my central belief is that leadership is influence, the ability to have impact and influence.
Absolutely.
You, as I said, you packed it all up. You've been doing this, again, not qualified in the sense of, you're a best-selling author, you're famous in some way or whatever it might be, and you went out there and you did this. So here's the thing. What is, leadership being influence, what is the message by virtue of you packing it all up and going out and doing this? What did you think is the message you've sent?
I think there's a few key ones. A big one is that challenging what's possible, challenging what's currently in place as well, and that's definitely been the case for me personally. Of coming out of a relationship, a previous relationship, and questioning not only everything from a business point of view, but everything from a life point of view, of just going, am I really living? And what do I really want to experience about life? And do I even want to get married? Do I even want to have kids? Do I even want this? Do I even want that? Like, these things that I thought were absolute concrete in my makeup of who I was as my identity, I challenged the whole lot. And continue to do so. So that, I think that challenging what's possible, that curiosity can take you anywhere, and probably even places that you can't even dream of just yet. That we as human beings have the opportunity to utilize our natural talents and resources to make an impact in the world, and how we actually do that determines the future of our species and the well-being of our planet. And so I think that showcasing that firsthand of how I personally do that through the speaking and coaching and through the music and short films while traveling the world is another part. And the other part is like doing this in a way that's not only good for you but also good for others and the planet is a kick-ass way to live. And you can live an extraordinary life at the same time. And it's definitely been the case for me, that's for sure.
I guess I've got to ask, what was the friends and relatives' response to, hey, dudes, I'm selling everything and I'm packing it up and I'm going to jump on a plane and bugger off somewhere else? Where to? Places I've never been before, where I don't speak the language. What kind of reaction did you get from friends and relatives and family?
I think that I had gotten past the stage with people that I knew of, like, this being a normal thing now, of that challenging what's possible. It's just at different levels. Like, this was a whole new level. But I remember it was his mum years ago where business was challenging and not going well, and the amount of times of, oh, maybe you should go get a job, those types of comments coming through. And I go, okay, thanks. I appreciate your love and support, and knew that was coming from a good place, of course. But then I remember there was one time I was living in, I think it was in Melbourne. Yeah, I was in Melbourne at the time. I was having a call on the phone with her at the time in the backyard. And I can't remember exactly what I just said I was going to go and do, but it was something new and something else I was going to do. And she said, well, you're probably going to do it anyway, so. And I think that was the switch where it was, well, point, he's not our child anymore. He's an adult, and he's just like, we've got no real say over it anymore, so he's got to rock and roll. So I think, the number of reference points that people had from my life previously. What
were you doing before, Ken?
Before getting rid of everything, I mean, I've been running speaking and coaching training company. This is year number 7 now. So I've been doing it for a number of years, coaching and training in emotional intelligence, creating music for 17 years now as well. That's been heard by millions of people around the world. So those parts had been in place and had been building.
But prior to that 7 years?
I was in retail and a huge amount of other jobs in between. My funnest one was a bouncy castle person putting bouncy castles up at kids' parties. So
how did you create that transference from job to entrepreneurial? What was that? What was the leap there? Because again, that leap for many people is every bit as big as selling everything and jumping on a plane and going to a place you don't know.
Maybe even bigger.
Yeah, because there's so much requirement of certainty, so much, all the things I'm embedded in, all those kinds of things. So what was it that shifted you out of the bouncy castle guy or the jobs into more entrepreneurial, so you used to run just think about it I'm being a cynical bastard
totally
for a moment, right? But you used to run a bouncy castle. Now you want to coach me in entrepreneurship? I don't think so, buddy. I think you should pay me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I had like that many other jobs. My family still joke about it from time to time.
Sure.
the amount of jobs that I had in just totally random areas is insane. But the big one for me came I'd been involved in personal development for a few years before this. But this was a really big moment for me. Was mid 2010. A neighbour across the road was screaming out one night when I was living in Adelaide in Australia, and another neighbour and I ran across the road to see if she was okay. Heard through the friends, she said my son's killed himself, and the neighbour and I looked at each other total disbelief about what we just heard. Ran through the house out to the backyard to find a mother with her son in her arms. And crazy experience from I went and looked in after the two little kids that were inside at the time. So the boy who had committed suicide, his brother and sister, very young kids, and saw as the dad came home, and then saw as the grandparents came home, and the look on their faces of absolute helplessness. And it was that moment where there were a couple of parts from that. One, that just nobody should ever have to go through this. And I'd gone through my own challenges of wanting to end my life earlier on in my teenage years. And so grateful that I worked through that stuff to overcome those challenges. And music had a massive part to do with that, in overcoming that. But realizing nobody should have to go through that. Not only from the boy who decided that was the only choice that he had, that was the only way out. But also the family. I can't even begin to imagine what they went through following that night. But the other part was here you are living an okay life, and there's people that need help. What the hell are you doing about it, man? Mm-hmm. And at that time I was just doing work, and I was happy by that, but pretty happy by then. But I still had my shit to work through, that's for sure. And so a few months later, I enrolled in a coaching course. Had no intention of coaching businesses or anything like that at the time. It was purely to help people. It was purely to help people overcome the struggles they were experiencing. And as I went through it, realized I had my own challenges to work through first and foremost.
Of course.
And so I went through just a mass. That was November 2010. Between then and about March, I went through just this mass transformation. I stopped drinking alcohol, that's been 77 years now, or 6 years, or whatever it's been. Went vegetarian at the time. I've been vegan for a number of years now as well. And so that, just big changes like that occurred. I moved states when I had never left the state before that, and so moved into this new environment. Just went through these massive transformations internally, realized these limiting stuff that had been holding me back since I was a little child. So went through massive growth internally first and foremost, which allowed me to not only go through the training, which was amazing and transformational, and allowed me to have the educational piece, but also the real world experience that came as a result of that allowed me to start see what are these patterns that are playing out in myself, in other people, and then through coaching people, it just happened that there was one person that was a business owner, and I started realizing the connection between human behavior and emotional intelligence and business as well, and business growth, and that entrepreneurship. And at the end of the day, you're selling yourself, and especially when you start building your business. And if you've got, it's usually the biggest personal development journey you will ever go on,
Of
because
course, fully agree with
you know,
that.
it's just a direct reflection of who you are and where you are. So
So tell us the tie-in, because this is a bizarre tie-in with
yeah,
grand piano.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. I
because
mean,
that's okay. Let's move you forward. Now you're speaking and you're coaching and you're doing these network events, and then the person's going, "What the hell's a grand piano doing in there?" This
yeah,
it's a Monty Python moment. You're
totally.
suddenly going to break into the piano and start singing show tunes. I mean, what is this, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've been writing for a number of, I said about 17 years now. So I write different instrumental pieces as well as pieces that are about human behavior, and now increasingly about sustainability as well, as I continue to be exposed to new external environments. And so it was around that time of that happening in 2010, I wrote the song about bullying and suicide that's now been there's about 1.7 or 1.8 million views now on YouTube, all organic, and it's been used in so many school projects and film projects and dance projects, and just in just many countries around the world. It's been incredible to see the impact that's made in the world. And so I've always wanted to be able to utilize, or for a lot of years, because of how much it's impacted me personally, of working out a way to utilize music to help make a difference in the world. And that goes back to having a former thing called Music Made with Meaning, which was about showcasing meaningful music from around the world, including my own. To then, as I moved into this coaching and speaking space, going, well, how can I utilize music in a way that is not just a gimmick as I do my speaking engagements, but is actually a point of difference, but two, can move people in a way that speaking alone can't. And I just did this. There was a speaking engagement in Canada that I just did. 700 people at each event, grand piano on stage, and the drone footage of mine from all around the world showcasing the natural beauty of our world. And that talk was on how we can utilize our natural talents and strengths to make a greater impact, and that these three levels of impact, self, others, and planet, are critical in us making an impact on all three levels, especially as leaders, to ensure that we have a future as a species on this planet, and that we don't end up doing the stupid thing of killing ourselves out, or killing the very thing that's keeping us alive. So yeah, utilizing that talent and strength I guess I have from a music and film point of view, that's reached millions of people now around the world, both from a film and a music standpoint, and piecing that together to show this is a living and breathing example. Again, I'm a big believer in being a living and breathing example of how you can actually utilize your own natural talents and strengths to make a greater impact. Now, for somebody else, it's not going to be music. It could be that they're great at building businesses, or being an engineer, or building a technology that can remove carbon from the air, or methane, or other transformational things. There's flights that could be used on renewable energy. Those types of technologies. That is the inspiration that we need in the world right now. That people have got to be utilizing their natural talents and strengths, not just for themselves, not just for their others and their families and their communities, but it's got to be for the planet as well. Sure. It has to be if we want to have any chance of survival.
And again, you and I, of course, have had many conversations before this, one of which when you were in Vancouver recently and we were hanging out 5-pin bowling together.
Yeah, it was epic.
And you told me something there, and again, you can choose to not say or say, but something you have planned for 2018 regarding the Amazon and the piano. And and if you want to speak about it, you can. If you don't, just let me know. But it's, again, it's not I love the fact that you're being innovative in the way that you're thinking about, when we think about people concerned about the Amazon, we think of this guy with dreadlocks and a long beard and who hasn't bathed in a couple of months, who's tied himself to a tree, and he's very easy to write off as a radical loony, or a girl who's got Amazon painted across her bare chest, rather than, I'm not against any of those people, and I think it's actually wonderful that they give their time and energy to do that. But you've taken a very different approach to your impact on to raising our awareness around our impact on the Amazon and on the planet itself. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that grand piano in the Amazon?
Yeah, I won't give away too much because we're early days in it, but sure. It's at the end of the day, I'm a believer that the best way to have somebody care more for the environment is for them to be in the environment. It's definitely the case for me. When I'm in there, I'm connected to it. Once you connect to it, you understand it more. You become connected to it further, and all of a sudden you care more for that and make decisions based on that. The second best way is to bring the environment to somebody, and so that, I believe, is through storytelling, and whether that's through music and through film, through the piano or the Amazon or anything else. Having stories that we can tell that inspire people, that influence people, as you mentioned before, in a way and touches them as a person that you might not have otherwise seen. Mm-hmm. I've seen that with the song I did about bullying. I've seen with the Colombia the film that I did about the natural beauty of the world that's reached hundreds of thousands of views around the world now. That has people connected to Colombia even more in new and unique ways. Those stories are incredibly important to tell. And when it comes to the Amazon specifically, at the end of the day, we need that to survive. And that deforestation has increased again there over the last year or so. So that and people might not know about that. No. Other parts that cattle ranching is it's like 60, 70, or some would say 75% of the deforestation is happening because it's cattle ranching. It's a big reason why I choose plant-based instead. It's aligning my actions to what's actually going on there, and so raising awareness around that is going to be an incredibly important part. But it's doing it in inspiring ways, because if people see that something is too big to do something about, it leads to apathy, and apathy leads to lack of action. That is where
I wanted to go, because I think, I've talked about this many times myself. The analogy I've given is that it's a rainy Sunday afternoon, you're at home and you're watching the telly and you're flicking through the channels as we used to do, and you see that commercial on there for which is a tear-jerking commercial, and it's those kids in Africa with the flies on their faces and the swollen bellies, and we see that and we go, oh, that's so sad, and then we flick off onto the next thing. But pick that person up and put them in the environment, it's a very different experience. They would come home and rave about it, and that's part of what you've done. You've as you said, you've taken people to those environments, but you've also taken the environment to them with your mini movies. And now you've got like millions of views on YouTube, right? Tell us a little bit about creating that kind of a following. Is that over? How long ago did you start with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been over time, and it's been different phases as well. One's been the I guess the human behavioural side, which has been in regards to bullying, for example, and depression and happiness. And then there's been this movement this year, really, it's been really this year, because I didn't even own a drone at the start of this year. I had no idea I would be doing this, right? I had some idea, but that's again the beautiful thing about curiosity, about how quickly it can go, especially when you're aligned to the purpose and why you're here and the impact that you're making. So the environmental side has been a massive growth this year, and as I've been then exposed to new external environments within the environments like Colombia and Costa Rica and Argentina and the northern parts in the rainforest there, and indigenous communities there, and moving to Mexico in a few days' time, and spending months there, it's a realization that of playing a much bigger game. And I'm a believer that if you align yourself to that which you're here to do and the purpose as to why you're here, and you're patient, that you don't need. I think this is what it is for me. It's not needing the recognition. It's knowing that you're doing the part and knowing that everything's working out just as it's meant to. And as long as you're aligning to yourself and continuing to be curious, then things will line up as they're meant to. And life has a funny way of working out just beautifully.
You're all about impact, and you wrote, and I believe, an ebook called 27 Ways to Have Greater Impact. I think that's what it's called. And that's available, right? People can grab that?
Yeah, cruise onto the website. There's a checklist there of just a number of different ways, and there's plenty more. But there's a good way of getting started.
Ways that people can have impact now, as opposed to feeling like, well, I've got to be part of some massive movement, or I've got to sell everything and move to another country, right? I've got to go live in Ecuador for 6 months. But it's not about that, is it? It's about simple things, everyday things that we can all do.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that something I thought about. I mean, I do it to the extreme, but one of the big reasons for that, one is because I'm a believer in doing it, but the second is that I thought no one mentioned about this, but a number of years ago I thought if I can be be a person or the person that somebody can look to and say, if I could just have 1% of what he's doing, my life would be freaking awesome.
Right.
And because I realized not at the time I thought, well, that could just allow them to live an awesome life. But then I realized reasonably recently that there's another layer to it, that when they get the 1%, that usually often leads to another 1%, and then maybe another 2%. And then the momentum starts to kick in.
Catalyzes possibility.
Exactly. And the curiosity then starts to feed about, I wonder what else is possible. And, oh, if I can achieve that, then I wonder what else is possible as well. It's definitely been the case for me when there's been big life-changing moments. So then that's led to another life-changing moment down the track. And so it is about the simple things. Look at and go, well, and it's about quality questions. Asking the question of, well, can I really make an impact? Well, your mind is going to go in one of two directions. If you've got limiting beliefs about that, then it's possibly going to go in the direction of, no, you can't, and leads to apathy again and leads to non-action. Whereas if you say, well, how can I make a greater impact on all three of these levels, in my own life and in others' lives and at the planet level as well, your mind starts being curious about what's possible, about how you might be able to do that. Because all of a sudden it presupposes that it can be done rather than doubting about whether it's possible.
Yeah, I think it's vital to have open questions. I mean, I think if somebody is that way and you say, well, can I make a difference in the planet? So if they have an open mind, they're going to go, yes, I can. I could probably do X, Y, and Z. But for most people, we're not that way. We're not conditioned that way. We have something called negative bias. That is a survival mechanism inside every human's brain. And when he says, can I have an impact on the planet? Me? No, not really. Even if I really wanted to, and I picked up garbage all down the streets, I've still got to work, still got to live. It's not going to make enough difference. But asking, how can I have more impact? What could I do today to have a little more impact? Those wonderful open questions make a huge difference.
Exactly. And I think the curiosity and becoming educated as well. I became and live a complete plant-based lifestyle now, and that was before I realized about the Amazon, because I realized, well, the largest emissions is from large-scale agriculture, from livestock. Then from a minimalism point of view, well, cars spend 90% of their time, or more than 90% of their time, not being used. And so do I really need a car? In terms of getting rid of stuff. And so when you start realizing and understanding what's really going on in the world, then you start to question, well, what can I do about this? How can I overcome this? How can I then, for me, I do fly a fair amount as well. It hurts me every time I do that when I'm trying to make an impact, but then, well, how can I make an impact, when aviation is a larger emitter as well? For me, I then offset. So I do carbon offset for all of the flights. So then I'm completely neutral. So it's one way of doing that. It's not ideal, but then I research and then I look, well, okay, what's being done to create renewable energy in flight? And I just found out that in July 2017, they did their first round-the-trip flight with a plane that was completely from solar, I believe. Yeah. So that it's coming. So I'm like, that gives me hope again, which then leads to me being more inspired about the future as well. The key thing is look at the things that you can do to save on the emissions that are happening in the world right now, from the way that you're running your companies to the way that you're leading to the way that you're living your personal lifestyle as well, whether it's the food choices or what you choose to purchase as well. And this happened again out in Colombia. Seeing mining companies moving into these pristine areas, and I found out it's the first time I've seen cement mining happen. And I go, so, the cement mining is happening because there's increased demand to create larger structures for houses that people don't even utilize large spaces of, or to build shopping centers for stuff that we don't even purchase or need, don't even need to purchase or even really want to purchase, that don't even end up getting used. So there's this excess stuff that's being created. I'm all for stuff being created, but create it for the right reasons, again, that's in alignment with the planet, and we can still have an economy.
But you're going to still bump into a lot of arguments around that, because that is the model that the world we live in is built on, which is consumerism. And
Yeah.
to consume, you have to produce. And in order to work, you have to produce. In order to buy the things that you want to consume, you have to work and produce the very thing. So it is this, I mean, that is an economic cycle that we're all living in. And so you throw your hands in the air and you go, well, okay, so what do? We all go back to the farm and grow our own potatoes and, and trade baskets. I mean, it doesn't seem feasible, particularly for a leader watching this who is running a Fortune 500 organization. Like, yeah, this is nice idea, dude, but that's not reality.
I totally agree with it. Like I don't personally, I don't want to go back to that because I love technology. I would love to see in my lifetime that we get to explore the freaking universe, that we've developed the technology that we're not utilizing for stuff that doesn't really matter in this world, and we're actually putting it towards stuff that allows us to explore the universe, like to explore galaxies, to go to different planets, but doing it in a way that's sustainable and working out ways in which we can actually do that, utilizing the technology. Like, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for the technology, if it wasn't for the drone, if it wasn't for social media. Like, these technologies I love with a passion, but we've got to utilize them in a way that's on these three levels of impact. And so, yeah, for the Fortune 500 company, like, if you're producing products and services that are currently bad for the environment, it's time to check yourself and go, well, asking the question of, well, how can we actually start producing products and services that are not only good for us and the bottom line, but also good for others and the planet as well, and putting that as a primary objective? Because at the end of the day, it is a growing movement now that, especially in millennials, but also in other areas now, that they are becoming more and more conscious about the decisions that are being made when it comes to purchases.
No doubt about it.
That there's purpose behind them, that if a company is more focused on a planetary point of view, an environmental standpoint, and they trump the other company, they're going to go with that and maybe even pay a little more. And quite rightly so. And I love where that's going. And so I'm a believer that we can have all that we want and so much more. And we realize, and this was another big reason for me, like, traveling the world, showing that you can live a kick-ass life. You can run an amazing company. You can do whatever you want and be in alignment with these three levels of impact at the same time.
Yeah.
And that I believe is the way that we can survive and thrive as a species for many years to come, and be in alignment with the planet, which is, I believe, the biggest challenge that we've got as a species right now.
Who is a leader that you admire, that you look at and you see is doing it differently? Is there a leader that stands out for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I love Brian at Airbnb. I love their model, and so love that. I love what's his name? Looptail by Bruce Poon-Tip, G Adventures. So great book on leadership and doing things for the right reasons as well.
Say that again slowly so everybody can hear it.
Definitely. So Looptail is the book, and it's by the company founder of G Adventures, which is Bruce Poon-Tip. So he's out of Canada. So they're the largest small group travel company in the world now. That went right from getting a $5,000 loan, and just it's a beautiful story from nothing to running a company, and again doing it in the right way. And not only from a planetary and an environmental point of view, but also, I remember part of the story where he talked about gender inequality in their workplace, and they realized that they had a mass sway towards men being in larger leadership roles. And they did something about it, and now they have it, on a level playing field. So I love that there's a talk of culture, there's a talk of purpose and spiritual aspect to it, but then also gender equality. There's also making sure that they're doing right by the people that they're going to from a travel standpoint, and that can change the world. So I think that it's a good book based on what we've talked about. I think that's a really good book, and it definitely gave me an insight to go, well, there are people that are actually doing this. There are people that are not doing it, but there are people that are doing it.
Yeah, and I think that's very important for us to recognize that when you think you're alone, if you do the research, you'll discover you're not. And oftentimes that's what stops people taking the action. Think, I'm just going to be such a wacky doodles if I do this.
Yeah.
And you realize that's not true at all. There are actually a bunch of people out there. There are actually movements out there that you don't even know about. I talk to a lot of people about conscious capitalism, and join the conscious capitalism movement and the B Corps, and start looking into this, and you'll find that these entire corporations are moving in that direction, and it's good for business. This is the thing, is you actually make more money doing it. I very recently introduced a guy who runs a venture capital organization that is purpose-driven. They only provide venture capital to purpose-driven organizations who care about the planet, who care about ecology, who care about the things that we're talking about here. And I think it's vital for us to remember you're not alone in this process.
I think just something to really mention there, I think, because I totally agree with you. And what I strongly believe is that, like, get ahead of the curve now, because there's going to come a time where people just simply won't purchase your products if it's not good from that point of view.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like it's coming. It's here. It's and just the amazing products. And as you mentioned, when you start doing the research outside of kind of maybe mainstream media, and you see some of these pieces that are being built right now, connections of mine, David and Sean Frankston at Plastic Bank, developing a whole social currency to be able to utilize plastic to be reused, and there's just amazing stuff that they're doing right now. Just seeing recently the products that are being built and machinery that's being built to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere and to be able to then reuse it. So there's like those types of things going on where you think, well, is there really a chance of us actually reversing the what's being done? When you start looking and going, there actually is. And if we utilize these technologies, it just comes down to how we're utilizing these technologies. There was one of the songs I wrote earlier this year called Our Modern Connection. The lyrics go, see, we can speed this up one way or another. It can bring us closer to each other, or it can send us further apart. See, it enhances who we already are. I suppose that's a clue for where we should start, a love for all that we are. And that applies big time to technology, that the technology is going to speed up the rate in which we either fall into decline or in which we solve the challenges that we're facing. It just comes down to how we approach it, who we are as individuals, how we overcome the challenges that we expose ourselves, that we're exposed to internally, that then determines how we then, go and serve the world and ultimately the planet and ultimately the universe. And hopefully we get to cruise around in some spaceships sometime soon as well.
There is that. I believe that the most successful people on the planet, and that's not, when I say that, I'm not talking monetarily, or not exclusively monetarily. There's certainly part of it, but not exclusively that. But I think that we're all pretty obsessive people, those of us who are driven. And I don't see obsessive in a negative sense, because it can be extremely positive. It can be negative, of course, but what would you say you're obsessed with, Cam? What is it that is your obsession that drives you?
Yeah, I mean, first thing that comes to my mind is just this that we've genuinely got a chance to turn this around. And if I can, the positive part is that I would love to be a part of being somebody who helped create that change that needed to happen. But then the part that I move away from, so that's the part I'm moving towards from, the part I move away from is I would hate to be seen and to have been somebody that actually caused the destruction that ended our species. Yeah. Like when we look back and go, what the were we thinking? Like, I would hate to be one of those people in that goes like, what were you guys thinking? I would love to be on the other end of the spectrum and be a key player in inspiring that movement, and just being a small part, a big part. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We're all part of the same collective evolution, and either at the end of the day, I have this thought come to me often now of either we can evolve through it now, or we can just wait 10 million years until a time where we evolve, a next evolution happens on this planet or somewhere else, and we become a species that can travel to other planets. So it's our choice at the end of the day. Either we kill ourselves out now, or we actually do something about it. And I would love to be a part of that impact that creates a change.
What's the most practical thing that you see that a leader can do in the next 24 hours to 7 days that they can immediately do with what it is that you've been sharing? Like, what is the big takeaway you want them to get and actually put in action?
From a personal point of view, I would question what you eat. It's one of the single biggest. If you dropped, even if you drop red meat, but if you want, like, move towards like full plant-based, that's a massive way from a reduction in emissions like that. Like that can be done within an instant. And, from that point of view, there are alternatives out there, and amazing alternatives now to especially if you're in a big city, then rock on. Smaller places, it's a little more challenging, but still possible. But there are just so many alternatives now where we don't have to eat what we used to eat as, when we were cavemen and cavewomen. There are alternatives there, and that just has a massive impact straight away. From a leadership point of view, it's a little more challenging from a 24-hour standpoint, but I would
even let's say in the next week.
Yeah, I would do a complete audit on the company and look at what could be reduced from an emission point of view, because what we could create takes longer, what we could reduce can be done very, very quickly usually. So I would look at that and be very frank about it and get the input. If you've got a large team, if you're a Fortune 500, for example, get the input. They're often going to be. And if here's the thing, if you're not currently doing those things, they're possibly already thinking about them. They're already listening to different things about the environment that they care about. And if they don't feel like they've got a say in this, they're going to start looking somewhere else where an organization is proactive in looking at this. So, that's where I'd say there. Look at how you can minimize the impact that's being made. Paperless, recycled material, those type of areas. They're just simple things that can be done straight away, and be curious about how you could make an even bigger impact, both from a saving point of view and also from a creation and expansion point of view standpoint.
This has been great, Cam. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed having you on here. Please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can find out more about you and your resources, so they can tap into all the great stuff that you're doing.
Definitely. Best place from a URL point of view is thrivingcollective.com. That's the company site, and you can check out all of the pieces there. From a social standpoint, so Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all of those channels, it is Ask Cameron Brown. So ASK and then Cameron Brown.
So Ask Cameron Brown on social, and the main website is thrivingcollective.com. Thrivingcollective.com. Of course, we will put that URL in. Again, Cam, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for inspiring us to certainly stretch and think about things in a very different way, and I love that. So thank you.
Had an absolute blast, Dov. It's been great.
Excellent. And I want to thank you, dear listener, for tuning in, dear viewer. And remember that this is not something you listen to in the background. I know you do that. I know the podcasts are going on in the background. You're probably doing something else, multitasking. But to stop for a minute, take a couple of notes, write down some things that you can do in the next 24 hours to 7 days in what it is that you've learned and gained from being on today's program. Listen, I bring you these outstanding guests who voluntarily give their time to impact and add value to you. Do yourself and them the justice of actually taking action on it. And remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing the most successful companies is often counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only to have those talent leave them at just an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent, only to have them leave you before you get your ROI, then come and talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into your core purpose. Fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there, because you can't outsource authenticity. Also, please remember to get yourself over to matrix.fullmontyleadership.com and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197. It's absolutely free. Just go over there. You don't need the www. It's just matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. Till next time, I'm Dov Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, here to assist you in tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach the next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit for your life, your business, and your leadership. So till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the impact you're already having and the impact you can have that will not only increase your profits and make you a better leader, but in fact impact the planet that we live on. Till next time, this is Dov Baron, and I am out.